Check, check, check. All right, say something, Disney.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hey,
Check.
we're back, everybody. All right, so tell us a little bit. I don't know if we were out the whole time, but welcome to Dev Update 18, everybody. Sorry about the audio issues there. But of course, Disney is here, and we're taking a look at the new Nix Rig. Tell us a little bit about what we're looking at. What are all these circles and stuff? And this is actually in Unity, you said, right?
Yeah, it's in
Okay.
Unity. So those circles at the moment are like roughly the hitboxes, and that's a very rough setup because I've just started implementing the hitboxes for Next.
Right.
Because we've just switched all of her animations over to a new rig. So this rig is built by Gimbal Zen, which is like an industry veteran company. They've worked on games. Pretty sure they've worked on Multiverses, which is a brawler that's just recently come out, as well as Street Fighter Five. So quite like a high level quality rig to be using. But we were using a like sort of default rig before, so we have had to like move all of the animation data over to from the previous rig. So
Right.
it's not quite ready yet, and we're still trying to tweak around with it. So but yeah, as you can see, it's pretty much where the hitboxes are like connected to the joints of the character.
Right.
And they at the moment we're using spheres on her, but we can switch them to just using boxes. And typically like we dial them all in like for each animation. So her idle, like her all of her different bits and
Right.
pieces, her jumps, her attacks, they're all having different uh, you know
Now, does
tightly
that represent the
tightly
actual
programmed
space
boxes.
of the hitbox that we're seeing the circles
Yeah,
kind of
so
take up?
that represents it in 3D, but
Mm.
when it's actually in game and fighting, it's in 2D. So it's just uses basically like only the XY
Right.
axis to make
Gotcha.
a box rather
Hmm.
than a cube, because we don't bother using three dimensional space in the 2D
Sure.
fighter. But yeah, I mean, if you had a 3D fighter like Tekken or Soul Calibur, those kinds of ones would use 3D hitboxes, of course, because they can also move pivot on the Z axis.
Right. I played a little bit of that at the Northwest Arcade Fest. I was playing all sorts of old school fighting games. So that's cool. From far back, the top of Nyx, like because there's so much circles on her, that from far back, it almost looks like we're developing a sideshow Bob character. Oh, I disappeared off the camera. All
Yes,
kinds of text here.
the
Going on.
hair, yeah.
What's going on?
I see that.
There I am. Okay. Yeah, so that's very cool. I love being able to take a little peek into Unity and like look at. It's not that I'm gonna understand it, but I know the complexities there, and that kind of adds to it. Just to see like, oh, that
Mhm.
okay, that's what you guys are dealing with. That's very cool to look
Yeah,
at.
and
And
these are just the rough blockouts as well. We haven't added the
sure,
any of the physics behind. So, for example, her belt straps and her clothing and her hair will have physics, um, and it'll be dynamic. So we'll add that in next.
oh sure,
Um,
gotcha.
and that'll be like so it's overridden by the physics engine basically. So uses animation data and then it cuts the animation data and uses the physics to
Now
give it the bouncing and etc.
right. Now here's a question because we've looked in the past at her extendable limbs. How do you go about doing that? Is there a certain point where like you put the extendable limb out and you put more of these hitboxes there? In other
Yep.
words, like when she's out there, will I be able to counter by just hitting? Will I still have to hit the core character, or will like that whole arm now be hittable?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good point because obviously certain parts of her will be hittable, certain other parts won't be.
Mm-hmm.
When we have the animation of her, because we do have a couple of animations for her kick and her like punch that extends out. Again, not finalized yet, but we're roughly playing around with the
Sure.
hitboxes, and the hitboxes are like are recorded on specific frames of those attacks. And I don't believe you'll be able to hit her hand when it's in motion because it'll have basically so many frames of it throughout the animation that will be a hitbox that'll be
Yeah, yeah.
difficult if or nigh impossible to be able to hit the hand. But uh, yeah, I mean you'll be able to hit her if you can somehow dodge her over her arm or through the hitbox, then you get to
Gotcha.
her. Like you'll be able to interrupt the attack. Yeah.
Right, absolutely. Very cool. All right, and next we've got, we wanted to take a look at some new animations with Ross, or some new combos. Last week we saw those combos in the very early development, so this is sort of the next step. So take a look at this and walk us through that and how this has come about from last week, how it's developed.
Yep. So basically, we're dialing in a lot of the speed, a lot of the frames which you can activate the combos, and giving a little bit more leniency so you can pull off they're not so frame perfect. Frame perfect pulling off combos is like super difficult. Like you got a single frame in 60 frames a second, so 1/60th of a second to hit the right button. It's just
Right.
it's brutal. So we have a bit of a leniency buffer that you can activate and it'll cue the next attack, like if you hit it within a certain frame buffer. So it makes it a little bit more lenient. I wanted to make the attacks feel like they connect a lot quicker, like a lot smoother. And we actually have special animations that actually continue from pose to pose. So we can actually cut the animation and then implement it at the frame where it moves into the next attack at that point. So it makes it a lot smoother looking as well, rather than just grabbing let's say a medium punch and then going into like a heavy kick, or a medium punch, a crouching punch. Like
Interesting.
you'd feel, even if it's just for a couple of frames, you'd notice like a bit of a like jump and stutter in the animation.
Okay.
So we've made it so that there's a couple of frames in between, so it's smoothly
Right.
sort of transitions.
It
And
definitely
also
comes
just
through.
I was playing around.
Go ahead.
I was really playing around just really briefly with sort of also an idea of like what it would sort of look like to have sort of a turbo or speed sort of effect,
I see that.
which is kind of fun because you basically play the animation, but you're turning on and off the animation at specific frames. So you leave this like after image, and using different shaders as well, obviously to show it. But that is just basically ROS again,
Like a
without
blue
obviously
Ross.
any colliders or anything.
Yeah.
And between each frame, just showing the I
Huh.
think it looks like kind of a cool little effect, but obviously not spending too much time on it because we're prototyping more about the mechanics rather than the graphics at the moment.
It looks badass, I'll tell you that. It's funny how like you could just play around with something for a little bit and it just adds so much to it from the player perspective, right? It's just like, oh shit, yeah, those new combos are cool, but he's also like shape shifting and like, I automatically picked up on the turbo thing. That's awesome. So very cool to see some new work there. And hopefully we'll see some more moves there. And again, anyone can hop on bloodyfaces.io and purchase the NFT Mint Pass there and try this demo out right now. So everyone make sure to check that out.
Yep. We've got the new launcher up and running, and the new backend working, and it seems to be working pretty well. There's obviously a few little issues from a few users, but nothing crazy, nothing across the board. People have been able to download and play it, so it's pretty cool to see that that's all working.
Nice. Good to hear. Good to hear. Next, we've got, let's see, Dojo's almost finished being optimized by the technical art team, dialing that in and working on a couple others things initially. So we're going to take a look at a couple like early on. Well, how about you? You just tell where are we in the process of these pictures that we're taking a look at?
Yep. So the dojo, where it's getting to its final stage. So basically, it needs to go through a final light map bake, which it takes quite a while because you dial all the. It basically takes ages so that it's really optimized when the player is actually playing it. So I think at the moment in the editor, if I have a look at the stats, I think we're barely making 60 frames per second in the editor with its overheads as well, and with the current unoptimized scene. In the new one, where it's easily hitting in the editor 120, 140 frames per second. So you can see a lot more of an optimization when it comes to the way that it's being drawn. It's drawing way less triangles. It's doing less draw batches. So they're quite heavily optimized now. It does have a slightly different look because we're making custom shaders and we're trying to dial in the final effect. But that again will change once we do the light map bake, because that basically draws rays from the lighting sources in the camera. So it does basically ray tracing, not in real time. It does it in over 24 hours, depending on how detailed the light baking is. So you have to leave the computer sitting there just crunching it, and then finally it'll make really high detailed maps, and that's what will actually be drawn in the final product. Which so that'll get upgraded again. You'll see another basically quality and jump when we get that on. The next one is the rooftop. Now that's only halfway through the optimizations stage, so like a lot of the stuff you're seeing here, you'll notice if you actually take a look at the details, a lot of stuff hasn't been mapped yet.
Right.
Still tons of stuff missing, but the geometry is more or less has been optimized and started to we're starting to also put in the like the animations and things. So there'll be like a monorail cart train background and flying cars and things and stuff will be animated. And then if you go take the look at the mountain shrine, you'll see that that's only just beginning the optimization process. So they're just starting to put in all of the geometry, and barely anything has any textures, as you can see. Starting to just implement the lights and sort of play around with it, and get that city in the background. Because again, all those stuff in the far background are typically just billboards. So we've taken them from the concepts and put them in. If they don't look right, if they don't match properly by the end of the sort of process, then we'll redo them. But yeah, so it just helps the artists also kind of have a feeling of like what they're trying, the look they're trying to achieve as well while they're trying to develop it. And it obviously cuts down on the cost of having all these gigantic buildings in the background when it's just a simple plane.
Absolutely, gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. So, like the gym or the dojo that's in was previously in the demo,
Mm-hmm.
was that like where was that compared to like where we're looking at the shrine?
Yeah. So that in the demo at the moment is a completely unoptimized straight from the
That's right. Okay.
straight from the concept. So
Right.
it's really high poly. So really bad for performance. And the shaders and the light mapping is just like basically me slapping on, you know, a more of a default shader,
Out of the
and
box
then
stuff.
doing more of a very low res sort of baking to make it look,
Gotcha.
at least somewhat feasible.
Right.
So yeah, it's a lot lower effort and quality.
Gotcha.
But it depends on the final look of the product. Like we're still not sure what our final image will end up looking like, so we can play around with
That's
it.
fair.
But the most important part is the optimization of the of all of the geometry. The
Gotcha.
geometry is the part that really is like the heavy performance hitter. So,
Makes sense.
but now that we've got all that, well, like low polyed in a sense, like, obviously you can't really tell the difference between high poly and low poly because honestly they do such a good job with low polying it, and still keeping the detail. But from like millions of tries in the concept to only like a couple 100,000 tries in the actual optimized one. So it's a huge difference in performance.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to getting those in there and looking for to play the dojo and especially shrine and whatever else. What will be the next officially? We'll be working on roof top and then shrine in that order, right?
Yep.
Gotcha.
I think so. I think that's the way that we've presented them. But also, we're really hoping to get sort of the Bloody Faces Lounge sort of pushed up in a priority there, so we can start getting people in playing that as well.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a good idea. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So next we've got what were we going to? Switched. How about the? Let's touch upon the matchmaking. That's what it was. Matchmaking's is progressing and should be ready soon. This we're thinking 1 weekish. Huh? Tell us a little bit more about where we're at there.
Yeah, so we're basically getting to the final week, hopefully, unless there's some crazy unforeseen issue. We've been designing the matchmaking so that because obviously these things you don't want to design them half-assed. You want to design them so that at the end, if we need to have 10,000, 100,000 players, or even more than that, playing at once, that the system can scale up to support that demand. So basically, we've been doing that from the very beginning, making sure that all works properly, doing stress testing on it, internal stress testing. And also, the client itself then needs a new network layer to basically communicate directly from client to client. So we've got one dev working on doing that new network layer, basically removing the default one that's currently in there and implementing our own, and hopefully more performant one. Also, he's making a few performance tweaks on the rollback netcode. He was doing like a deep dive into the performance enhancements that we could make with it last week. So he's going to be implementing that. And Walid, our network engineer, he'll be basically working on the back end side of the matchmaking, but then sends the client, the information to connect through to the other clients. Now, a part of this matchmaking service is having a validation server that sits there and monitors the matches, so that we can basically get feedback data, so we can, every time you're activating any attacks or anything, it'll be sending it through to our server, and then we can say, is this player cheating? Is this player not cheating? Or as well, we can save the data, and if there's anything goes wrong with it, we can actually play back that match, and we can go, oh, something went wrong here with the networking, and we can see exactly where it happened, because the last input, we can replay the match like basically frame for frame. So it's not, it won't like cause any issues with the networking, because it's a service that runs, it's not priority. Like the priority is the connection between the players,
Right.
but it sits there as a secondary priority to basically just taking that data up, and then, because it'll be important for when we're giving players real currency rewards, because if we have, we're not going to be able to just have people hack the service and be like, oh yeah, I won, and just keep sending messages, and the service like, sure, I'll just give you all these rewards. It's like,
that seems important.
We have to make sure that it's actually you're actually like playing and earning it.
Yeah. They will be testing for weaknesses on that front, so definitely important.
Yep, 100%.
All right. Well, awesome. Wrapping up, we're also planning for an open world for our players to connect and explore. This is a little bit of a new concept we've been playing with. So tell us a little bit more about this and where this kind of originated with the team.
Yeah, so basically from the very beginning, because we wanted a really strong like metaverse vibe to the game, sort of a place where all of the players could connect to and actually engage with each other as well, not just in the fighting sense.
Right.
But this is still very early planning phase with it, but we're basically wanting to further down the road of development, we want to allocate resources to basically create a big open world. It's not going to be huge and sandboxy in nature. It'll probably be more like, you're playing within the cities or playing within locations. But we also we're planning on how we can integrate sort of the player experience into that. So, you could be exiting and entering from your own gym. You could be going to arenas, like a proper arena within the space, to potentially like, go and sync up with players, or that's like the arena could be the hub of where you're, doing all the access for fighting other players, things like that. So we want to really like bring the player into the world, and hopefully we can connect that up with the player avatar drop. So the player avatar will be the character that you make in the game. That'll be the owner of your gym, because it'll obviously be you. And then we can show that character in the game as well. So the NFT will actually be able to be brought into the world and actually have some, concrete relevance. So yeah, that's just something that we're planning. We're in the very early stages of, we're still exploring it sort of creatively, but also the allocating what the idea of how much resource will take in development to make.
Oh, that's very cool.
So I thought that'd be a nice little sneak peek for everybody to.
There's a lot of potential there.
Development process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could also foresee like a Bloody Faces, the clubhouse being in a metaverse.
Definitely.
So
that's exactly what we want to do, right? We wanted to make, from the very beginning, we wanted to make it so that it was an engaging experience, so you could actually get into the Bloody Faces clubhouse. Potentially there would be some arcade machines where we'd have like interesting or old school games you could potentially play, or at least go and talk to a vendor that'll sell special items for them, so as a VIP access.
Right. Yeah. Maybe like an emulator or something.
It would be really cool to try that, to try and put an emulator in the game.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was messing around with making a few little like retro style sort of mini games. So I might even just make some like, mock up some games that happen within the game.
Yeah, so we've talked about that too. So like a Disley head on something and.
Well, I remember back like playing on Super Nintendo Nintendo 64. I think it was like Donkey Kong or something. And in the Donkey Kong game, you could go into, and there was an arcade, and you could play arcade games inside Donkey Kong on the game.
Ooh,
and I always thought, oh, that's crazy. Like, you're putting games inside games.
That's
like
meta.
I've always thought that
mind blown.
Yeah, pretty meta.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, I'm definitely interested in knowing where we would go with that and seeing what kind of ideas we would cook up. So that'll be something to definitely keep an eye out in the future on. Yeah, man. Well, I think that's about it. We've got on the countdown some cool things, some awesome visuals. Obviously, make sure you're following us on Twitter to catch all of the clips that come out of this and any announcements outside of that. Also, We're very busy in Discord, turning up the engagement over there. So always make sure you're hopping over there to join the community, hang out, and of course, we're always posting all of our events in Discord, so you can set reminders and all that. So that's definitely the place to be if you want to get more involved in the Fight Legends community. Until then, like and subscribe on YouTube, follow wherever else you're watching. Disley, thank you very much, and we'll see everyone
Thanks for
next
having me.
week. Deuces.